Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is the next section or the second video for this AI Bootcamp. It is found on the same website as week one. You can see week one's assignment, and then the recap of what will be in the video button for week one will be found here in an orange button similar to this one. And then just under there is week two. So today we're going to be talking about the background sections that make up our FIE. And a lot of times I actually will do this before I go see a student, actually almost every single time, so that I get a really clear idea of what I'm looking for when I go into test. So there are 5 short prompts that I use to kind of build that background. Of course, they are what I use, pretty much like the skeleton of what I use, but you'll adjust those as you kind of start using them and see what works and doesn't work for you. So this week, again, like I said, the 5 prompts, they're not super long, they're nice and short. How to input different referral formats safely. So it could be that you got typed paper, or you could have gotten digital teacher and parent inputs that you're like looking at on a PDF. You could have Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, and you could have handwritten. Like a lot of parents, I know oftentimes will get parent input. And there are different ways that you can input that information. I talked about it a bit in week one, which is that snip, talk, drop. But you can always read information if it's digital or on paper and you can't de-identify easily. If you can snip part of a document, you can absolutely do that. You can take a picture, especially of work samples. I find that I do that a lot. For background, not so much, but and then in Google Forms, you can just copy part of the column or the row that has the information about your student. You can just pick that up and drop it in as well, is another way to do that. So you know how you get the responses and they go onto a spreadsheet, and then you look at the view of the responses on a spreadsheet and you can see all of the students that have filled out that information or has had that information filled out. You'll need to just find the row where that student is and just copy that row. Make sure you don't grab more rows than that one, or otherwise you'll be confused. You'll give it confusing information, and it might not give you the correct output. It might hallucinate as it combines student information. Okay. So the first thing, and for the purposes of today, we're just going to work on a monolingual English student. So I have some dummy data here. So none of this is real, but let me show you what I've got. So this is kind of some parent observations at home. And of course, this is a fake name, but you can make sure you de-identify. And so it's easy to do in a Google Doc, but just make sure however you do it, you either read it or you do identify. But this is kind of the input that she's giving about her child's language. And it might be more information that you usually get, but this is a kind of a good thing to look at and see, like, where can you follow up if you do have some concerns. And then the teacher language observations, again, fake teacher. You can use fake names. It's just you got to remember to change them all. And then they've given some input as well. And the speech teacher the speech and language pathologist did do kind of a screener, let's say. Sometimes they do that. So I have some information from there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drop all of them. I'm going to grab it all. And just the language section right now. Okay, there it is. I'm not going to grab the reason for referral, and I'm actually not going to grab the parent's name. Okay, so I'll Control-C that. We'll start with ChatGPT. So I'll drop it in there. And then I will go to, so I just dropped that in there. Okay. And then I'm going to come to the website, share that. And then here's the language prompt. Again, it's nice and short. This is the monolingual English. So I don't need, sorry, here, this is the one I want. Okay. And I grab that and bring it over to ChatGPT. Just paste that prompt in there. Okay. And then I will share the tab so you can see that. I just drop that information in there. And then we're going to see what it does. Okay, so see how it's separating parent information, teacher information, and then the summary. If yours gives it combined and you want it separated like this, tell it. Say separate one paragraph for parent input, one paragraph for teacher input, and then give a summary at the end. If you want it a different way, tell it, but save that prompt into your prompt library, because you might, if you keep having to do it, it's not learning, you might incorporate that into your custom instructions, okay? Now, instead of copying everything again, I'm just going to grab the prompt. Sometimes it gives it to me all at once, and it's nice because I can just copy the whole thing. I'm going to bring it over to Gemini. I'm going to drop the prompt in there. Okay. And I need to grab the dummy data again. So I'm not going to take the parent's name again like I did earlier. I'm just copying the same information that I copied earlier. So I'm not showing you, but that's what I'm doing. Usually I can just grab it from the previous FIE or the previous AI model, but it didn't let me do that. Okay, so I'm going to go to Gemini. I'm sharing already in Gemini. No, I'm not. Okay, there's the prompt. And now it's the dummy data. There it goes. Okay, I'm going to send that. Okay, so see how it's adding headings? Maybe you want to leave that there so that you can remember, but don't copy. I wouldn't copy parent perspective, teacher perspective. And then integrated, right, in clinical analysis. It's giving me some red flags to consider because I told it to do that. Okay. These will be mostly for the speech and language pathologist. You could share those with them, but also you might, make sure you take note of that when you're doing the CTOP or the TAPS. It knows that because those are I told it that those were the tests that I used. Okay. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab that whole prompt from Gemini, and I'm just going to bring it over to Copilot. I will drop it in. It has all the information there, and let it go. And so again, it's doing a pretty good job. Okay, remember I've interacted with it a little bit more. So if you happen to get bullets, tell it. Remember, write a narrative style paragraphs, separate parent and teacher input, and then give a summary. Make sure you're reading very carefully. Remember, you hold the professional judgment for this. You need to make sure that everything you're including in your FIE is what you would write if you didn't have AI. So you'll copy and paste into your Google Doc or your Word doc, whatever one you're using. Okay, I'm going to come back over to the website. We're going to move on from language. These darker yellow boxes just give some tips. And this one, it's mostly for emergent bilingual or bilingual diagnosticians to consider. But sometimes it'll be just notes and information for anyone. So for example, this health one, this is just the core questions that you should be asking about every student according to TEA. But if the kid already has a diagnosis, there is a different prompt that you can use. And then this is where it's telling you to consider some things that potentially you have not yet. Okay, so I'm going to grab the prompt for the student who doesn't have a diagnosis, just for this example. And I'm going to come over to ChatGPT and I'm going to drop it in. And then I'm going to grab the dummy data. So here's what I've got for dummy data. So like vision and hearing screening, pregnancy and birth, motor skills. Okay. And I will do that and I will put it in to ChatGPT first. So I'm just going to share this tab and there we go. Okay, so you can see how nicely it's already understands how I want it written. Okay, now it did give me the whole prompt in one text bubble, which is I love. So I'm just going to grab that whole prompt with the dummy data and come over to Gemini and drop it in. Okay, it's giving me bullets. So I know I need to say, write this in narrative style paragraphs. Give me one paragraph for the parent input, one for the teacher input, and then a summary at the end. But I do want to note some of those CSEP potential areas for me to consider. Make sure you don't copy this. Okay, it's just telling you what it did there. I don't love these M dashes. It gives it away that I'm using AI. So I'm going to say never use, and they're called M dashes. And again, if it keeps doing it, then I probably need to remind it. And so Gemini is acting up a little bit now, but I'm going to say, go back to the narrative style paragraphs, but don't use M dashes. Again, if I have to keep doing this, then I want to make sure that I'm telling it. So I realized I wasn't sharing that tab. So let me show you what it did first. So it gave me, I gave it the prompt, and this is what it did. Gave me a bulleted list. So then I said, write this in narrative style paragraphs, one for the parent, one for the teacher, and one for the summary. It did this. These are those M dashes that I don't like in my writing. Then it told it to not do the M dashes. It gave the list again. So then I said, go back to the paragraphs without M dashes. Now it's done it. Okay. And I would give it some feedback. Say yes, like this. This is the paragraphs that I want. Okay. Now I have that prompt already in my clipboard. So I'm going to bring it over to Copilot and just paste it in there. I just did a paste. There it is with the information. We'll see how it does with its writing style. Yeah. Okay. So pretty good. All right. Coming back to the website, we've done language and health now. This is the one for the diagnosis. So sociological and family. And there's the prompt. And I want to make sure that are these affecting learning is what I wanted to synthesize. Okay, so this is ChatGPT. I am dropping the prompt in, and then I'm going to grab my dummy data here. Family and home context. I know some of you might include attendance and school history potentially in this section. Just make sure that you include that information in there. I usually include that in the academic portion, so I'm not bringing it over there. Okay, coming back to ChatGPT. The prompt is there. I'm dropping the data. And it's going to begin writing for me. Again, it's separating. This one doesn't have a lot of teacher input. It's mostly home, right? But it does include the information that I want. Okay. So let me see if this prompt saved. Yes, it did. Perfect. So I'll grab that prompt. Let's come over to Gemini and let's drop that prompt in here. Okay. Now remember, in Gemini and Copilot, if you have a DPA, you don't need to de-identify. But if you haven't, you need to make sure that you are. Like this is using the student. I might want it to use X student and take away the headers, right? See these very short paragraphs? Not loving that. So I'm going to say narrative style paragraphs, please. Instead of saying the student and the parent, write X student altogether, X parent altogether. Teacher R or teacher M for teacher for reading, teacher for math, all together. Save that. And again, if this fixes it, I'll want to save that prompt. Okay, so it's just reviewing. Yep. It's saying it wants that information again. I'm going to do already. Oh, it's gotten a little bit lost. So again, you have to give it sometimes, especially I've noticed when there are lots of updates happening for these tools, they will act a little funky, which is why, honestly, I'm glad that I have both Gemini and Copilot. If you don't, it should be fine, but it's just sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because you'll be like, what's going on? I already showed you how to do this. That's much better. It's got an X student in there. It fixed it. And then it says like teacher for reading, teacher for math. That's how I like it because that'll show up as a misspelled word and I'll know I need to fix it. So I'll give it some feedback. I'll say, yep, that's what I want. Okay. The more feedback you give it, the more likely it is to predict the next thing that it's going to say, or like the next word that it'll pick in writing more accurately. Remember, AI, all it's doing is predicting what it thinks the next word is based on data that you've given it. So the more data, the better. All right, let's come back to the website here. We've done now, we're sociological, health and language. Let's do the emotional behavioral. And here it says, remember your role, right? So sometimes a school psychologist will need to be involved, but for this purposes of this one, I'm not going to have that. So I will grab that prompt. We will begin with chat again, ChatGPT. Giving it the prompt and then going over to my Google Doc where I have some dummy data. You can always create some dummy data for yourself to practice too, just so that it gets an idea of what output you'll get once, because you may not be observing students just yet. That I'm going to use for observations a little bit later. Okay, so I'm going to grab that, come back to Chat GPT. It's already got the prompt, so I'm giving it the data now. Now, I've been using Chat GPT for this work for about 3.5 years, so it just naturally knows me better. I just have to be more careful about the de-identification in this case, okay? I don't want to put anything in here that would jeopardize the student's privacy. And then I will grab the prompt, which it nicely saved in one box for me, bring it over to Gemini next, make sure I'm sharing that tab, dropping the information in. Gemini was the one that was giving us a little bit of trouble earlier, so let's see what it does. Okay. Seems to be understanding the assignment right now, which is great. Okay. And then I will come over to Copilot, share the tab, and drop that same prompt with data in that was already on my clipboard. Okay, so there is that. Pretty good. All right, so I will come back over to the website and see where we are. So those are the prompts. This is just a reminder of the Snip Talk Drop, and it's a Google Doc, so you can download it if you want. This is the custom instructions for a student with ADHD. It's also very thorough, like the one we had done earlier for the SLD. So let me share that so you can just get a sense. But it's more about the ADHD, which if they have a diagnosis from an outside provider, like a medical doctor or a psychiatrist or psychologist, I can do that evaluation as an individual evaluator in my district. I don't have to have a school psychologist necessarily, as long as we can document that the student's disability is affecting them educationally, right? So sometimes I am asked to do those evaluations, especially reevaluations, if they've already been qualified for an educational need due to that disability. Specifically, that's when I get involved, and sometimes I'm the only evaluator. So those are there for you. That's again there. Okay. This is also something I wanted to share because the paragraphs that the agents are writing are pretty cool, but they may not be exactly how you write or how your district wants you to write. So you can always retrofit your district template. And what I mean by that is you can give it the information, have it write it up. Okay. And then if you're not liking exactly how it's writing it, you take that same section in your template or in your FIE, both of them have to be de-identified. You can copy it from your template or your FIE, put it into the chat and say, write it about this student, but like this. And it will rewrite it in the style from your template or from your previous FIE that you really liked. That is how you retrofit. Okay, and then you could go one step further and say, give me the prompt that would give me this output. And it will come up with a prompt that you can save in your prompt library. You can also make sure that the de-identified FIE or your template is in the brain of your AI. So in the knowledge section for all three of those. The only one that it can't live in is, I believe it is Copilot only lets you do websites right now. But there's a plus sign that where you can add some documents to give it examples as well. But you can always just copy that section and say, write it like this. And it will rewrite it exactly how you've modeled it. Okay. And remember to say about the student that you're working on, not so it doesn't just copy the information that you've given it. Okay. So that is kind of a cool way to retrofit. And then these are the things that you can be working on after this video is most of you already will know how to do this, but identifying whether your student is monolingual or bilingual and going back to the home language survey is probably the best thing. And then if you've got some parent input, making sure that it kind of makes sense, because sometimes parents will put English on the home language survey, and then in the parent input, they tell you that they speak Spanish mostly at home. So I would follow up with those parents to make sure. And your district, just has identified them appropriately as either emergent bilinguals or not. You do want to make sure that you have the core questions down. If the disability or the diagnosis does exist, you go into the deeper health information. These are just the different prompts. Make sure you're adjusting and adding to your prompt library as you need to. This is the recap of what will be in this video, and then I will paste the button here right before week 3.